This GeekWire podcast is brought to you by BECU. Stay tuned to the break as Brian Westbrook interviews BECU's Stacy Black for today's Money Hack about financial strategies for navigating unexpected career change. For more money hacks, check out geekwire.com/BECU.
The power of being at a university is the people you educate and send off into the world. In the old days, you'd get a magazine and you'd get this little card in there with a checkbox, and you'd check what your occupation was. I forget, this to send it off and get a free something or other, okay? And I would check researcher, okay?
Not educator or professor.
It took me a couple of years to start checking teacher or educator. And I realized that that's why I was there. I can send people out that change the world.
How is AI reshaping computer science education, and what does the future look like for students entering tech as automation accelerates the industry? Those are just some of the questions we'll tackle this week with our special guest. I'm GeekWire co-founder Todd Bishop.
And I'm GeekWire co-founder John Cook.
Welcome to the GeekWire podcast, everybody. We are here this week with Ed Lazowska, a longtime professor at the University of Washington Allen School of Computer Science and Engineering, a driving force in computer science, tech policy, and education for nearly 5 decades. Ed recently retired after 48 years on the University of Washington faculty. We'll talk about the impact of AI on computer science education, the changing tech job market, and we'll reflect on his career and legacy and the changes he's seen and what's coming next for the field. Ed, it's great to see you.
Oh, great to be here. And actually, I don't retire until August 1st, so you're catching me in my final week.
Okay, perfect. By the time this airs...
So you're still held responsible for anything you say.
My goal in retirement is to feel less responsible, as opposed to disappear
Well, why don't
completely.
you go out in a ball of flames on this podcast?
That would be fantastic.
Yeah.
All right, let's make it happen. So, Ed, we do want to reflect on your career as we have this conversation, but I wanted to start just in the present moment, if we could. How would you describe what's been happening in the tech industry over the past 6 to 12 months and your lens on that through computer science education and what you're seeing? I mean, we've seen the headlines, coding is dead, and it would just be great to get your overall thoughts to kind of lay the groundwork.
Yeah,
for
so
this
let's
discussion.
back up a little. This is a field that's always changed faster than any other field, except maybe for modern biology. All right, so it's a field in which educating students for lifelong learning is more important than any other field. And I'm going to use the word coding pejoratively. Coding is the translation of somebody else's design into something executable. And that is dead. I've been quoted as saying, that's coding, I believe it is dead. And on the other hand, at least at the moment, design is not dead. Working in teams is not dead. Figuring out what problems need to be solved and what the right approach is to tackling those problems is not dead. And understanding how humans are going to use and be influenced by digital technology is not dead. So those are all things that we educate our students to do.
So where does that leave the Allen School? Like, does it mean massive changes or status quo?
It means continuous changes at a faster rate than ever before. And the world is changing at a faster rate. What's happened in AI, and of course, I'm not an AI person, I'm a systems person, okay? But what has happened in AI has really caught everybody by surprise. Nobody believed that enormous models trained on vast amounts of data would display the capabilities they're displaying. It is utterly mind-boggling. And, it's thrilling in many ways and exhilarating, and it's dangerous in many ways too. I always think that one of the problems with large language models is we conflate fluency with authoritativeness, right? If you're a convincing talker, people think you know what you're talking about. And that, of course, is not necessarily true for humans, and it's definitely not true for AI systems, right? So if you ask Dr. Google a question, Dr. Google gives you pointers to 10 websites, all of which say different things, and you say to yourself, geez, I better go get myself a doctor. Okay,
right.
And you ask Dr. ChatGPT, and Dr. ChatGPT gives you an authoritative sounding couple of paragraphs that
may or may not be true.
At best are no worse than the worst of the things Dr. Google gave you, right? Yeah,
Right.
Exactly.
So universities aren't known for moving that fast. So given this rapid technological change, how is the University of Washington Computer Science Department changing and morphing and adapting to this new world?
universities in some ways move faster than you'd guess, and the Allen School and most computer science departments move a lot faster than their universities, which creates, of course, a certain amount of internal friction. But that's something we always do. Roughly half our faculty is in AI in a serious way. And there are AI people across the campus, and there are, of course, people using AI across the campus. David Baker is the most visible. But gosh, we're, always changing. And right now, AI is incorporated in all of our courses. We don't yet have a policy for how it will be used. And the reason is everybody's experimenting, and you don't want to nail things down before you've done the experiments. But everybody's grappling with this.
So going back nearly 50 years of your career in academia, have you seen anything quite like this before? Or are there any comparisons that you can draw?
No, I think, obviously the internet was transformative. It changed most things, although not everything the way AI is changing it. But I certainly haven't seen anything like this. Moving from punched cards to interactive computing, which I did, was, had its impact, but nothing like this. Moving to mobile had its impact, but nothing like this. I think this is unprecedented.
You said earlier that you're a systems guy, not an AI guy. What's it been like the past couple years for you to observe what's going on at the AI layer? And are there things that you think about in systems that inform your viewpoint on that? I'm just curious about what it's been like for you over the past couple years.
Well, first of all, there's obviously a lot of systems work in supporting AI these days. We're building systems of a scale never imagined before, using techniques that were novel not very long ago, 10 years ago or so. A friend of mine, Leslie Lamport, won the Turing Award some years ago for an algorithmic innovation that's fundamental to cloud-scale computing, and the paper was rejected for 10 years before it was accepted, because it was viewed as of no consequence. And that brings up the interesting question of what researchers should be doing. And there is some research that's best done in industry, and that's always been the case. So for example, the Metas and the Googles and the Amazons and the Microsofts of the world have access to vastly greater computing than we have access to. At the same time, there are a set of fundamental questions that one has the luxury to consider in academia that are going to be really important at some point, and that's what we have to focus on.
So you mentioned earlier that it's both exhilarating and terrifying. I don't know if those are the exact words that you used, but that was the sentiment. Where do you fall on that spectrum as you think about the next 5 to 10 years?
I'm incredibly optimistic. And again, let's keep talking about AI, which I am not an expert in, for gosh sakes, okay? But, if you think about the impact of AI on what we do, on information technology, on computer science, part of what it's doing right now is the same thing it's doing in a lot of other fields, which is taking the drudge work out of what you do. There was a wonderful example of Amazon on a blog post last December that Andy Jassy brought my attention to, in which they had to update 10,000 programs from one version of Java to another. And they turned an AI system of theirs loose on it, and the estimation was that it saved them 4,000 person years of programmer time, which at a reasonable estimate of loaded cost is like $1 billion. Now, the interesting thing is that's grunge work that Amazon software engineers hate to do. So what it was doing was cutting those people free to do more interesting things like architecting next generations of Amazon support for AI and for scalable computing, all right? So if it can take the drudge out of what we do, that's great.
But is that exactly what's happening? Because then you see, and this ties into your world, when educating the next generation of computer scientists, that there's a lot of talk about the bottom rung, the people that are trying to get in and do that drudgery work, and then they try to grow in the organization. They don't really have those opportunities as much.
Great question. So there have been newspaper articles recently that say the bottom rung of the career ladder is toast. And I think that's an issue in all careers, right? So entry-level lawyers, for example, do things that AI is going to be able to do a lot of. And entry-level programmers, I think, have historically done things that AI is now capable of doing. And I doubt Microsoft and Amazon are going to be paying entry-level salaries for things that AI can do. So what are entry-level people going to do? What do we have to prepare them to do? One thing we have to prepare them to do is something we've always prepared them for, but in a greater measure now, and that is fix other people's programs. right? Whether those programs are written by AI or other people. No one begins from a blank sheet of paper, a blank screen. Right? You're always editing and composing something else. So if AI gives you a draft and you have to fix that draft, that's something to do. And Amazon, for example, in their example of the blog post, did not do away with humans entirely. The humans had to make sure the AI was doing the right thing, had to make sure tests were appropriate, things like that. So I think Oren Etzioni had a wonderful interview 6 months ago with the Harvard Business School on AI, and Oren always does a fantastic job. He was really eloquent. And one of the things he said is, you're less likely to be replaced by AI than by somebody who uses AI better than you do. And I believe that 100%.
For now.
Well, I think it's going to continue to move up the scale. But, if I'm a kid entering college these days, what would I rather be in than computer science? Like journalism? You tell me.
Yes, of course, Ed.
Well, that's an interesting question, and we can go down a whole rabbit hole on that.
But maybe the liberal arts background is, as you were starting the conversation,
yes.
You were saying all these things that you needed to do to be in computer science, which is work in teams, think thoughtfully about things, bring things together. To me, it sounds like a liberal arts education is actually better suited for this than a traditional computer science is.
Well, what's traditional computer science? Okay, we're at a real university, and
right.
This
God
is not a coding 50 academy. Plus years.
Right.
It's not a coding academy. All right. And, the University of Washington today is like where I went to college, gosh help us, 50 plus years ago. And I took a year of urban history, and I took a year of linguistics, and I took a bibliography course where we read 16th century books bound in, believe it or not, human skin in one case. Okay.
Wow.
And
weird. Okay.
And
the Hannibal Lecter School
of
computer science.
And I had time to drop out of engineering and physics and applied math on my way to computer science. So,
do you think other students are experiencing that? Because it seems like they get a bit more typecast and a little bit more of a narrow lane as they come into an educational system. Well, I mean, at the University of Washington, you actually choose your major basically before you even get in there.
This is a real concern. Okay, so on one hand, our students do have, a major at UW can only prescribe 50% of your courses. So I think our students are well educated, and we have students who are dual majors, not just in fields like biology, but in fields like music and art. I'm really proud of the students in our program and of their breadth and their humanity. On the other hand, as a field gets more and more complex, or let's just say older and older, and there's more and more to learn, there's more and more focus on the field. I worry about this more with our graduate students than our undergraduates, to be honest. Okay, and this is a long time ago, but when I was a graduate student and a young faculty member, I could have at least a passing understanding of the entire field. Okay. And of adjacent fields. And the really interesting stuff always takes place at those interstitial spaces. And it is harder and harder, for example, to get our graduate students to take the time to go to a colloquium given by somebody in a different sub-area of computer science.
Yeah.
Because honestly, the resumes that get you your first job today are the resumes that would have got you promoted to your second job 10 years ago.
You've got to be that much deeper on your chosen field that you don't have time to go out and get the classic liberal arts education, even in the realm of computer science. That is
the concern.
Yes.
That is the concern, okay? That people need, you have to go put in more and more effort in order to make a contribution, do something new.
And that's where the real innovation has come from over the years. It's from people like Steve Jobs, who understood not just the computer science, but the liberal arts, and were able to apply design thinking to things like programming and products.
Probably a decade ago, a little more, I helped Reed College introduce a computer science undergraduate program.
If only they'd had that then.
Well, they had one computer science faculty member who's a PhD alum of ours, a wonderful fellow named Jim Fix. And what happened was when Jobs died, there were a whole bunch of high school kids who came to learn that he had gone to Reed. And they didn't understand that what he learned at Reed was dope and calligraphy. Okay, and so these computer science wannabes were applying to Reed in droves, and they had to respond in some way. But here's the argument I made at the time, and I did the same thing at Whitman College in Walla Walla, Washington, and that is that computer science is a fundamental part of 21st century liberal education.
Interesting.
You got to know it. Okay, and so nobody's going to go to a Reed or a Whitman just because they want to get a job at Microsoft. That would be a fine outcome. Jonathan Sposato went that direction, for example. But they go there to get a liberal education, okay, and to become well-rounded individuals. And knowing computer science is part of that these days. You just can't survive if you don't. And you can't excel at anything ranging from biology to management science if you don't understand computer science.
All right, Ed, in the meantime, ChatGPT is a pretty darn good researcher, or at least it seems to be. So coming up next, I want to share with you some of the highlights from the deep research that I had ChatGPT do on you.
Oh my God.
As a jumping off point for a discussion in the next segment about the span of your career. So we'll do that when we come back. You're listening to GeekWire.
Brian Westbrook at GeekWire Studios. We have Money Hacks presented by BECU, joined now by Stacy Black, lead financial educator. This episode's topic is all about career change, whether you're changing your jobs, you're faced with an unfortunate layoff, or you have a windfall like the lottery. What is the plan that covers all of that?
In all of those scenarios, it's important to have a plan in place, and that includes a budget, a plan for savings, a plan for spending even.
I love that. We've got a lot more in this episode of Money Hacks presented by BECU. I'm Brian Westbrook. Check it out at geekwire.com/BECU. Stacy, my plan is to win the lottery.
Me too.
Listen to the full interview and find more episodes of Money Hacks at geekwire.com/BECU and find more information at becu.org. Welcome back. It's Todd Bishop with John Cook. Our guest this week is Ed Lazowska, longtime professor at the University of Washington's Allen School of Computer Science and Engineering. Ed is, as he mentioned, about to retire after 48 years.
48 years.
So ChatGPT got that right. So
Good.
Check that for one. Okay. I won't read this whole thing, but I'll read the intro to get us started here. I mean, it is a long report that ChatGPT compiled on Ed Lazowska. And the headline is Ed Lazowska's Legacy and the Future of Computer Science Education in the AI Era. This is its prep for me to help get ready for this interview. Okay.
This explains your intro.
Did it seem too robotic?
It did, yeah.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Okay. Ed Lazowska earned his PhD in computer science from the University of Toronto.
True.
In 1977.
True.
Joined the UW faculty that same year.
True.
Launching a 48-year career on the faculty. Rose through the ranks from assistant professor to full professor by 1986.
Yep.
Served as chair of the UW's Computer Science and Engineering Department from 1993 to 2001.
Yep.
Was the inaugural holder of the Bill and Melinda Gates Endowed Chair from 2000 to 2020.
Yep.
Helped found the UW eScience Institute,
Yep.
pioneering data-intensive science research, and served as its first director. Also held visiting scholar positions at Stanford and UC San Diego and adjunct appointments. Now, in your career, you've focused on the design, implementation, and analysis of high-performance computing and distributed systems.
Yep.
Yeah, I could go on and on. It's
Gosh, I want one hallucination at least.
Yeah.
Come on.
This is not hard to find.
Yes.
Okay?
This is all out there.
This is all on my website.
Yeah.
Okay, fair. It's pulling from the computer science department in Toronto, from the University of Washington. You're right. A lot of it is pulling from your bio.
So what's
and
the point,
GeekWire,
Todd?
and GeekWire.
And GeekWire, of course.
Yeah.
Great source.
Ed, as you reflect on the nearly 50 years and like where you were at the beginning of that, I don't know if you remember your first year at the University of Washington, your first day maybe, but like if you could go back to that person, that version of Ed back then, nearly 50 years ago, and say, you're not going to believe what we're going to be doing in 2025. Like, what would be the things that you would call out to that prior version of yourself?
So let me twist this a little bit.
Please.
Here's what I didn't understand when I first came to the University of Washington. This is going to sound horrible, I didn't understand that my job was being an educator as opposed to being a researcher. Okay? The power of being at a university is the people you educate and send off into the world at all degree levels. You know, you used to, in the old days, you'd get a magazine and you'd get this little card in there with a checkbox and you'd check what your occupation was. I forget, this is to send it off and get a free something or other, okay? And I would check researcher, okay?
Not
and
educator or professor.
It took me a couple of years to start checking teacher or educator. And I realized that that's why I was there. You know, I can send people out that change the world. And if I'm at Microsoft, I hopefully am designing software systems that are on millions of people's machines, people's computers, okay? So that's an important type of leverage as well, right? And I came to realize that my biggest impact was working with students, with people, and that's why I was there.
How did that change your approach? Because there's a lot of rewards for academic research, especially at a major research institution like the University of Washington.
I kept doing research, but at a university, when you do research, it's in the context of educating students, as far as I'm concerned, at least. And at the graduate level, unfortunately, the only way we know how to teach people to do research is to have them do it. So the goal, again, at all degree levels, from the high school students we work with to the graduate students and postdocs, is to send people out there who do even better stuff than we were able to do. And that's the mission, and that's why we're there.
Okay.
And I think the University of Washington, 50 years ago, I will say, did not emphasize outstanding teaching. That university clearly does today and has for many decades. And I'm really proud of the emphasis that's put on devoting attention to students.
What would you call out, though, in the current tech landscape, something that, even just one thing that might have shocked you back then, if there is anything? I mean, back then, 50 years ago, was that a...
Well, it was Microsoft's founding year, essentially.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So I'm going to...
You predicted the growth of Microsoft, of course.
I'm going to deflect you again for a second.
That's fine. That's fine.
When I moved here, Microsoft was in Albuquerque.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And there was no Aldus and there was no WRQ and there was no Attachmate. Those were the companies in the early 1980s that were founded. Microsoft moved back here in 79. Aldus and Attachmate and WRQ, that was right the very early 1980s. The Washington Software Association, now WTIA, was founded in 84, 40 years ago now. So, you know, technology here was Bowen making planes and Fluke making voltmeters and Physiocontrol making defibrillators. And you have to think how Seattle has changed. It is just utterly mind-boggling, right? And there are stresses and strains. And on the other hand, this is such a different and honestly such a better place than it was 50 years ago. I just think it's remarkable.
You think it's better?
I think it's vastly better. And I think that in general, when it's not, we are always seeking somebody else to blame for self-inflicted wounds. Okay, and what do we mean by that? We got some traffic problems. It seems to me that until about a decade ago, we voted against every reasonable traffic measure. Right? As I understand it, Almweg, for example, offered to build the monorail down to the airport in 1960 if we'd give them the right of way, and we said no thanks. Okay? I was told that MARTA in Atlanta was our light rail system. Right? One of our senators had lined up the funding for a light rail system in Seattle. We had to put up 10%. We said no thanks. Right? So Atlanta said, geez, we need that. And they put up the 10%. You know, we complain about South Lake Union. Lee Hood and I, in the early 1990s, worked very hard to promote the Seattle Commons Initiative. Okay? We were going to use civic money to build a park and mixed-use housing and tech space that extended from Lake Union to Westlake. And what happened there was that, Paul Allen loaned $20 million to the Seattle Commons effort so that they could start buying up the parking lots before the prices got jacked up. And the deal was he would forgive the loan when the citizens approved the Commons effort. And we voted it down not once, but twice.
Because he was involved. In part.
I don't remember that.
It seems like it was a bit of a...
Well, there was a backlash, as I recall, because
Okay.
that was in the early 90s and mid-90s, was that there was a backlash against tech, which continues to this day.
Well, be that as it may, what's down there is a heck of a lot better than what was there in 1990, which was nothing but parking lots with broken glass and one-story warehouses.
True, but it's not nearly as nice as a park would have been.
Well...
in one view of the world.
Right. We had a vision. which was perhaps, one could argue, better than what's there. We voted down our vision twice, for God's sake. We have no business pointing the finger at somebody else.
Ed, talk about your role, because you're getting into this, in terms of your civic engagement, this cross-pollination between academia, business, and government. You've played a very central role, and I think a pretty unique role as it relates to a professor at a university. I can't find any other examples of somebody who sits in that very interesting center of those three worlds. And talk about why that's important to you and how you balance those different interests.
Well, let's talk about the tech industry first. The Allen School grew up in partnership with the tech industry here, and that's just an enormous asset. They've been huge supporters of ours from the get-go. Microsoft from the get-go, Amazon and many others more recently, WTIA. But growing up in close partnership has just been really beneficial to us, and I hope beneficial to them too. Amazon hired something like 103 of our graduates this past year, so clearly there's some benefit in there, but that's not why these companies are supportive. I think they understand the importance of a good university and a good computer science program to a vibrant urban area. And, my feeling is that all of us have an obligation to the place we live and to the people in the place where we live, and we've got to figure out how to make it better. So I've had a keen interest, for example, in K-12 education here. And we have a view of ourselves in this region that in some times is not entirely consistent with reality. We don't have a great K-12 system, for example. We have the most regressive tax system in the nation. The poor pay more here than they do in any other state in the nation. Actually, that's changed. We're now probably third from worst because of some recent changes that were made. But these are issues that I think ought to be important to all of us because we need to have a thriving community, not just a thriving tech community.
But you seem to be a bit of a unicorn in this instance, that you do go between those three worlds pretty seamlessly, and you are a uniter across those. One of the rubs on the tech industry and people in the tech industry is that they don't care as much about the community and civic engagement. So what do you say about those critics in our community? You say that the tech community is not doing enough to drive forward our interests as a society here.
I was on the board and the executive committee of WTIA for 27 years until a few years ago. And I think WTIA has moved a very long distance over that period of time towards recognizing that the tech community needs to help create a thriving community for everybody. But part of it, I've just been lucky to be with people who expose me to other interests. As an example, back in 1994 or 95, the Greater Seattle Chamber of Commerce runs these things every year they call interregional visits. And they decided to go to the San Francisco Bay Area to look at how biotech innovation and information technology innovation took place there. And they asked UW to help them arrange an agenda for the trip because they didn't know anybody who could help them with that. And so Lee Huntsman arranged a day on biotech and I arranged a day on information tech. And that was the trip out of which Bill Gates Sr. and Susanna Malarkey and Tom Alberg and others developed what became the Technology Alliance. Okay? And the goal of the Technology Alliance was, it was born of the recognition that while the Bay Area was well ahead of us in many ways, they also were just scrappy and thinking about the future. And our secret to success was Bill Boeing moved here and Bill Gates and Paul Allen grew up here, and it's a nice place to live and we haven't screwed it up too badly. And this was not a strategy. Okay? So, we got to have a good education system and a good research enterprise and a good entrepreneurial climate.
And those folks that you mentioned help drive the tech industry that it is today in Seattle. But who's the next generation of the Tom Albergs and the Bill Gates Seniors and yourself who are leading the charge? I actually struggle to answer this question. I'm curious if you have that next generation of people that think about the community in that same way.
I think there are always great people coming along. I teach a class every year with Greg Gottesman, for example, who's probably 20 years younger than I am. And Greg is just a good human being. Now at Pioneer Square Labs, but out of the Madrona DNA, which was Tom Alberg and Jerry Grinstein, Bill Ruckelshaus, just an incredible group of people who moved the city forward and took it as their responsibility.
Well, just to emphasize this point that I'm trying to make as it relates to our guest here, Ed Lazowska, your good friend, Peter Lee, who leads research at Microsoft, had this to say about you. I don't know anyone who has done more than Ed Lazowska to illuminate how academia, government, and industry work together to create new technologies, provide economic opportunities for people, and improve national competitiveness. It's pretty high.
Did you reach out to Peter for that quote?
No, it's ChatGPT. I bet, hopefully, based on everything you said, that it got so much right before that we got to fact check that.
I hope he actually said that.
It doesn't ring a bell to you?
All right, it's Todd jumping in after the fact. Yes, in fact, that was an accurate quote, not a hallucination from ChatGPT. In fact, it was from one of my own stories back in 2021 on GeekWire about a $1 million endowed professorship that was established at the University of Washington in Ed Lazowska's name based on a combined gift from Peter Lee, Jeff Dean, Brad Smith, and Harry Shum. All right, back to our conversation.
So here's where that began. I have to admit, Peter is a friend, and we go back, more than 30 or 40 years, okay? But in the early 1990s, like 91, 92, the national academies essentially studies that typically the government directs them to do because they want the answer to a question. And a group of us was charged to look at what was then the High Performance Computing and Communication Initiative and do an evaluation of this federal program. And we hijacked the first chapter of that report to look at how innovation takes place in information technology. And we produced something that colloquially became known as the tire tracks diagram because it was a crummy little diagram in which a piece of it looked like tires scraping along the road. Okay? But what it did was to show the interplay between the federal government, the university system, and industry that had made America the leader in information technology. And recognize a lot of things, that it's not a steady pipeline. There's lots of back and forth. There's a movement of the people. There's a movement of ideas. If you look at reduced instruction set processors, for example, Dave Patterson and John Hennessy at Berkeley and Stanford, respectively, get a lot of credit for that. But in fact, IBM pioneered reduced instruction set processors, and then they dropped it. Why did they drop it? It's the innovator's dilemma. It was a competitor to their 360 architecture, and they didn't want no stinking competitor. And John and Dave picked it up, and eventually, in the fullness of time, IBM became the largest manufacturer of reduced instruction set processors. So the point is, it's a complicated ecosystem, and what I worry about today, all right, looking at what's happening in the nation, is a lot of factors there at work to break that really magical interplay between government and industry and academia that has made us the leader. And that's a source of grave concern.
When you look locally, this is a question from Taylor Soper, GeekWire's editor. He wants to know, what would you add to Seattle's startup ecosystem to help spur more startup creation and big winners?
I would add a couple things I would add. I would add more venture firms. I would add more highly capable incubators, although there's been a lot of progress there recently. There are several really first-class incubators now.
Anything on the public policy front?
Well,
you're always advocating for more funding of computer science education, so I'm surprised that wasn't top of the list.
Look, if there is something I would do for the region as a whole, it would be improve the education system at all levels, okay? Yeah. And that includes, for example, sending kids to pre-primary well-fed in the morning, okay? So it's not just growing enrollment in undergraduate computer science programs. The education system is the seed corn for tomorrow, including entrepreneurship. And we need a better education system in this state, top to bottom, and we have to stop deluding ourselves about how we're doing. Unfortunately, probably to have a better education system, we need several things, but more money is one of them. Okay? That's not the only thing we need, but we need a different tax system. We need a tax system in which, honestly, people like me pay what we can afford.
We're talking with Ed Lazowska. He is a longtime professor at the Allen School of Computer Science and Engineering at the University of Washington, and we will be right back with more. Welcome back. It's Todd Bishop with John Cook and Ed Lazowska. So, Ed, you're retiring. What does that mean? Is that retirement in quotes?
Well, this is the deal I made with my wife. Okay, the deal was that I would reduce to 50% when I turned 70. And the main impact that had was cutting my already meager salary in half. And I agreed that I would reduce to 0% when I turned 75. So I'm doing that. Right? I'll stay engaged, but what I want to do is to decrease the extent to which I think that every little problem is my problem. And I will continue to focus on the big problems. And there are plenty of those to keep me busy.
I can't imagine a world in which you are still around and you're not engaging on some level with these issues that you've been involved with for decades now.
Yeah, of course. And, an example is I'm on the technical advisory board for Pioneer Square Labs. I chair that board, and that's really exciting, and I will continue to do that. I'll continue to be involved with the tech industry. I'll continue to be involved at UW. Greg and I are teaching our course next winter. It's just I'm now getting the same salary of zero that Greg has been getting for the past 20 years. Okay, so.
Well, I will try to make up for my AI-inspired intro by saying one of the things that I really appreciate about you is your unvarnished take on things and the way that you champion the Allen School. And if, like, we wrote something that you loved, you would, without fail, give us an email that said terrific with multiple exclamation points. However, if we wrote something that was off the mark, whether it was about UW or anything else, you would be sure to let us know. I mean, you know where you stand with Ed Lazowska, and I appreciate that fact because that's not always the case in this tech community. There's a lot of people who are kind of pulling punches and not necessarily telling you what's on their mind, and I appreciate that about you,
Well,
Ed.
thanks. I'm a prodigious emailer.
Yes, you really are. You really are. How do you, but it's short and to the point. How do you navigate email? This might be a good tip for folks out there.
I don't have I spend way too much time at it.
Yes. Yeah.
So changing the subject totally, here's an interesting factoid.
Yes.
I think people don't know. You remember back when IBM was looking for an operating system for their PC?
Yes.
Okay. It's worth noting that whichever operating system they chose, it was going to be written by a UW computer science alum.
Either
Tim Patterson or Gary Kildall.
right.
Okay, so Tim Patterson at Seattle Computer Products had written QDOS, which stood for Quick and Dirty Operating System. It was renamed 86DOS. It was a functional operating system for the 8086, and Microsoft essentially acquired it as they were signing the deal with IBM, and it became MS-DOS. Obviously, they did lots of work on it, but that was Tim Patterson's system. Gary Kildall had been a PhD graduate of the department a few years before. I think Tim was 1978 as a bachelor's grad. Gary was 1972 as a doctoral grad. He was teaching at the Naval Postgraduate School in California and consulting for Intel, and founded Digital Research down there and wrote DRDOS and CPM. Okay, and CPM was really a highly innovative system. And there's a complicated story that I don't think anyone knows the full details of, but IBM failed to come to terms with Kildall.
Right. It had something to do with a plane, right?
That's the story, yes.
It might be apocryphal.
Ed, I love this about you because you were like a walking encyclopedia of tech and intersection with the University of Washington. I think I could rattle off any industry. In fact, maybe we can do it here. And within the tech ecosystem, and you'll have a UW person who is an innovator or creator in that. So like storage. Go to town.
Stop. No.
Yeah.
Here's what this does.
Yeah.
This speaks to the impact of universities on the regions in which they live.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's really important. Every vibrant tech region is anchored in one or more great universities. And every vibrant city is anchored in one or more great universities. And UW has played an instrumental role in helping to create and sustain the arts community in Seattle, for example. It's not just technology. So
the
that's what
University
we
of
do.
Washington has really moved up the charts in terms of its computer science program during your 50 years there. Why did that happen? What were the turning points? Was it just the growth of the tech industry was able to support it financially, which allowed you to hire great professors, and then you just expanded based on the success of the industry, or was there something else?
We have benefited enormously from being in partnership with the industry in lots of ways. From Seattle being a tech town, that meant there were lots of parents here who had tech kids who wanted to get a tech education. It meant there were lots of generous people who were willing to support the growth of our program. All of that is important. One of the places I was looking at the time I came here in 1977 was the University of Wisconsin, which is a comparable university in many ways. And I thought of UW and the University of Wisconsin, the other UW at the time, as being pretty good computer science departments in nice places to live. And the University of Wisconsin is now a very good computer science department in a nice place to live. And the University of Washington's computer science department is in frigging Seattle. It's unbelievable. So,
well, I guess what's near,
I'm just
you
blessed.
got Chippewa Falls, which had the big supercomputer. Cray was out somewhere near there. So yeah, I guess that's the closest I can think of.
So
Yeah.
a lot of good fortune, and I think we've contributed to it in some small way. But the fact that Bill and Paul moved back here is really what has transformed Seattle.
Well, I would say it's more than a small way. I mean, you look at the number of, you just cited the data on the number of grads going to Amazon. And I mean, you could probably go through every one of the large technology companies, every one of the startups in this region, and there's DNA to the University of Washington and your programs. Yeah.
I would actually point to one other thing as well as a factor, and that is, I guess, maybe over the last 10 years, you and others at the Allen School have championed this idea of, for faculty, it's not all or nothing. There are faculty who can go out and work in industry and still have a presence in the UW Computer Science School. And that, I think, has really allowed the university to retain a lot of talent that it wouldn't have otherwise.
Right. So we saw Stanford losing many of their best faculty, particularly in AI, because they were rigid about you can go on leave for 2 years and then you have to come back or resign. Okay. And our feeling was if we could have half of somebody for the rest of their career, that was better than having zero.
Yeah.
Particularly given that many of the external opportunities are in AI, and that's the hardest area to hire in these days. And you see in GeekWire the salaries that are being paid to top AI people these days.
It's nuts. And the recruiting that's going on.
Yeah.
Just
right.
recently,
So we have people doing this at Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Meta, NVIDIA, the Allen Institute for AI. I'm forgetting a few.
Are you going to stay on the board of AI2, by the way?
Yes, for sure.
Okay.
For sure. And again, AI2 is an enormous asset to us. You think about this, there are 200 top-tier AI researchers at the Allen Institute for AI. No academic computer science department has more than, 20% that number, and we certainly have smaller than that. It's just unbelievable. And all of their major projects are led by our faculty members, and AI2 as a whole is led by our faculty member. It was founded by Oren Etzioni, and it's now led by Ali Farhadi. It's a remarkable asset.
And I know the AI2 incubator is separate from the Allen Institute for AI now, but I mean, you can see the direct lineage from the UW to AI2 to the incubator to the startup community, just from that
Absolutely
one
right.
thread.
Absolutely right.
Ed, you've stayed very healthy in this career physically. How have you done it?
Bicycling and wine.
And a little bit of beer every once in a while.
A little beer, yeah.
Is that you ride your bike everywhere?
I ride my bike everywhere, yes. For many years, we were a one-car family, and it belonged to my wife. So I certainly commute from Ballard to UW on my bicycle.
Yeah. It's inspiring. I've seen you out in the pouring rain and with a lot of guilt, just driven right past you. I think I might have honked and waved.
I hope you didn't splash.
I'm sure I didn't. Hey, so you mentioned earlier the class that you've taught for many years with Greg Gottesman, now at Pioneer Square Labs. And John, you've spoken to that class a number of times. And I've spoken once or twice, and then they bring John back. Although, have you fallen out of favor at this point?
I guess, yeah. I've lost it.
Talking about the media landscape and startups. I'm wondering, as you reflect on that class and the students that you've seen go through there, how that's informed your view of the future, what you've learned from those students, and sort of what it makes you think about where the industry is headed, not just in tech, but in business more broadly.
Look, the great thing about students is they don't know what they can't do. So they try unbelievable things. And the story of any student team project is originally a goal that's just laughable in some sense. You know it's clearly unachievable, but they get to work. And a few weeks in, depression sets in because they realize that what they wanted to do can't be done. And then suddenly, towards the end of the allowable time period, miracles occur. And they may not have achieved what they set out to achieve in the beginning, but what they achieve is far more than you thought they would ever achieve because they didn't know what they couldn't do. And that's the beauty. And, what we have to do in education is not beat that out of students, okay? We have to keep them believing in what they can do and believing that they can discover. And, that's what set me on that course, honestly, was my undergraduate education, in which I was treated like an adult and asked to do things that nobody knew how to do in computing. And, it turned me into a teacher, and it turned me into a computer scientist. It made all the difference in the world. Mentorship is amazing. Everybody needs mentors and sponsors. And I've had many of both. I still, a couple times a year, get together with my undergraduate mentor, who's now 86 years old and is still teaching introductory computer science. This will not be me. Okay, but he was actually out here last week, and I went mountain biking with him, speaking of on the bicycle.
Wow.
But he had an e-bike.
Oh, well. Cheater.
Wimp.
Mid-80s, I think you can allow it.
Yeah, exactly.
But just to wrap up here, it sounds like that kind of optimism, that kind of approach is one of the things that shapes the way you think about the future and your own optimism.
Sure. And you asked about the progress of the Allen School. The very first chair at the Allen School was then the computer science group in the Department of Computer Science. Jerry Noe arrived in 1968, and he was done as chair the year I arrived. But he always said, hire people smarter than you. And he realized that that's hard to do because they're going to make you look bad. Okay? But that's when I look at the young people we've hired to our faculty in the past 10 years, they're just mind-blowing. They're unbelievable. I can't possibly keep up. So getting out of their way is an important thing for me to do. Create the room to hire another one of these mind-blowingly capable people. And if you keep hiring people better than you are, you're going to keep moving forward. And, at the student level, graduating people better than you ever were. That's the goal.
Tell us about the Allen School's current leadership and where you think things are headed from here.
Well, Magda Balazinska has been the director of the Allen School for 5 years at this point, and she is just extraordinary. I knew she was going to be good. I didn't realize she was going to be great. She's just been really extraordinary in every way. And honestly, I hope she's able to lead the Allen School into being a truly independent school at the University of Washington. That's what we need to be. We're called a school right now, but we're in the College of Engineering. And that means we're not at the adult table when the university discusses important strategy matters in areas such as artificial intelligence, for example. It just does not make any sense for a computer science program, particularly an outstanding one, to be at the kiddie table. And that's where the University of Washington has us positioned. So, 5 of the top 10 computer science programs are fully independent schools and colleges. And that's something the University of Washington can do to help the future of the region.
Any parting thoughts you would want to leave us with, Ed?
I always say this. I appreciate what you two guys in GeekWire do. You are just so fantastic.
For that reason.
I realize,
I was just trying to land the plane, Ed. I wasn't fishing for a compliment.
I have to say it. You people are the community and tech community, and it's so important. It's just so important.
Well, I hope we still get to touch base with you, see you at events, and have you back on the show in the future.
You can
Ed.
count on it.
All right. Ed Lazowska, thank you very much for talking with us.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. Curt Milton edited this week's show. Until next time, I'm Todd Bishop.
And I'm John Cook.
We'll be back next week with a new episode of the GeekWire podcast.